second countdown in 5, 4.
Good evening and welcome to Richmond Public Schools Governance Committee meeting. Today is October 12th, 2021. May we have a roll call, Ms. Richardson?
Yes, and first I'll read the electronic meeting statement.
Yes, I'm sorry, yep.
No problem. This meeting is being held as an electronic meeting pursuant to and in compliance with Richmond City Council's Ordinance 2020-093, adopted April 9th, 2020, and extended by Ordinance number 2020-183, adopted August 20th, 2020, and by Ordinance number 2020-232, adopted December 14th, 2020, and the school board's resolution approved on April 20th, 2020. Simultaneous translation is being provided tonight in Spanish via Zoom, and the meeting notice contained information on how individuals needing translation services could obtain the service. The meeting notice also stated that the meeting would be a virtual meeting and would be live streamed for the public on the division's YouTube channel, and link was provided. The agenda of this meeting was posted to board docs. After roll call, we will state how many board members are participating at the time of roll call. And now we're ready for roll call. Ms. Nicole Jones.
Here.
Ms. Cheryl Burke.
Here.
Ms. Dawn Page.
Here.
Ms. Mariah White.
Present.
And Dr. Shonda Harris Muhammad.
Present.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum and we have 5 members of the committee present.
Thank you so much. It's Dr. Muhammad, you had a motion? She frozen? Oh,
I'm sorry, I couldn't get off mute. I don't know what is going on. To go on to close.
yeah.
Hold on for just a second. There's no close in the agenda.
No, to amend it. Remember, we was gonna amend the agenda.
Oh, okay, yes, I'm sorry. My notes are over. I move that we amend the agenda to, hold on for a second. Computer is slow. Okay, hold on. Excuse me, I'm sorry, ladies and gent that we have present.
Now, it's my understanding that if we're going to go into close, then we have to have a separate Zoom link.
No,
to do
we're
that.
not.
We're not.
I don't think
Okay,
we are.
I'm sorry. Okay.
My mind is in a board meeting. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Chairwoman Jones, can you type in the chat box, please? What
What you?
I don't have. I don't have that.
Okay.
Oh.
Motion.
Mhm.
I forgot the item. I don't have the agenda in front of me. That's why I want to be able to speak to the item number so they'll know what we're. Okay, thank you. I move that we remove the retreat from discussion on the agenda. The school board retreat.
Second.
I typed it in the chat box for the record.
It's okay. Do we need to have a vote? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Is there any discussion? Ms. White, I see you type something. Okay, yes, Ms. White.
Why are we removing the retreat from
this meeting when we're supposed to be having a retreat very soon? I'm a little confused. That was the purpose of this meeting?
Well, the purpose of the meeting, one, was to finalize the manual. And we pretty much have finalized, or we discussed at our last governance meeting, the components of the retreat, but there have been some changes. And so since we haven't officially shared them with Chair Burke, we figured we'll just remove that off the discussion for tonight, and it'll come via email, what the next steps for the retreat will be.
Okay. Is whatever we're going to do, you do know that I'll be leaving at 7?
That is correct. I see it in the chat. Yep.
Okay.
We only
I just-
have one thing. We only have one thing. So
But I don't know what it is. That's what I'm saying. Why was the discussion?
you didn't get the agenda?
I mean, I was on there earlier. I was on the school board, my school board computer earlier. I just got off work. So if you sent it after 3 o'clock, no, I don't know what it is.
Okay, so just a quick overview. We had on the agenda that we were going to finalize and discuss the violations, which you brought forward at our last governance committee. We were going to discuss the school board violations. I sent all of you the policy that we already have on file so that we would be able to reference that, because part of the discussion was looking at what we have in the actual manual and then kind of mirroring them, because we realized after the fact that we already had a policy in place.
Okay.
And so as far as the retreat goes, like I said, we'll discuss, an email will be forthcoming with those, because there have been some changes made to that. But for tonight's discussion, in all intents and purposes, we want to keep it on the violations, the policy, which is we agreed that we wanted to finalize the manual, and that was part of what we needed to come back and do. And so based on the mandate to have the manual done, we met that goal that was recommended by VDOE. However, we did agree that it was a living document and that we would continue working on it. Part of the discussion that we had the last go round was about the violations and how we would address those. And before we decided to, develop any new policies or new violations, we figured it made the most sense to just discuss what we already have and then look at any changes or amendments to that and bring it forward for discussion.
Okay, I'm looking at your email now. No, I wouldn't have never got this.
Okay.
I see it was after 5:30. No, but I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And so I can, if it makes the most sense, you all tell me how you want this to go. I can share my screen with yes, ma'am.
We need to vote on did we vote on the?
No, because we was having discussion. I'm sorry. Yes. So we need to vote on removing the actual retreat from the agenda. I apologize. You're right. Ms. White, did you have any more questions before we vote?
No, I know exactly what we're doing.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Ms. Richardson, we ready.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Burke, Ms. Burke, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I
Miss-
said yes. Can you?
Yes,
hear
ma'am.
me?
Yes,
Thank you.
sure. Thank you. Ms. Page,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
and Dr. Harris Muhammad.
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion passes.
Thank you. So with that being said, I'd like to, at this time, share what we have already in the manual for violations. And then we can have a discussion on what the policy states. And what I'll do is, in the document that I'm getting ready to share, which I sent to you all, I'm gonna add to the bottom of it, right underneath where it says procedure for addressing violations. Underneath, well, actually, I'll put it at the top, right under where it says procedures. And I'm just dropping this in here just for informational purposes, Ms. Lilly, because I know that this is the policy, but I'm just dropping in what we all agreed on for the manual. We can look at that and then we can discuss what the policy states and go from there. So let me share my screen really quick. I think this is it. Can everyone see that?
You make it larger?
Yeah, and hold on one second because I shared the wrong thing. Sorry. Sharing the thing. Share screen. This is the one I want to share. All right. Close this out. Close this out. All right. Can everyone see it? Is that good? Well, that ain't it. Wait a minute. I apologize. Hold on. Here's the document. Okay, here we go. Policy 1.5. Got it. Okay. Hopefully this is the right one. All right, let me make it there. Okay, there we go. Can everybody see that?
Can you make it larger?
Yes, ma'am. Is that good? Is that good, Ms. Page? Or you need it larger? I can't hear you.
Can you make it larger?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
100%,
Yes.
okay.
Okay,
Right there?
a little bit more. Okay,
Dr. Harris, Muhammad, you good? Okay, perfect. So here's what we had that's in the manual: violation 1, violation 2, violation 3. And I believe that what we have was a subset of what was already in the policy, because when I went back and looked, they mirror each other. However, based on the committee, we felt that there weren't enough, that it wasn't, to Ms. White's words, it wasn't meaty enough. And so we agreed that we would discuss what we, what's in the policy, and then look at whether we need to add something to what we have written, or do we just need to incorporate the policy in and of itself in the manual. So everyone kind of see, like I said, what we have here, and going back, it just mirrors what's in this policy.
mm-hmm.
And so the question is, we talk here about whenever we believe someone's violated. We don't have this direct language in the manual, but again, it is in the policy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we need to be, because at this point, we also aren't referencing the governance manual like we should. So do we need to, when we have these issues, bring forth the policy? Or, this is something that I'm looking to defer to to the committee on how we should implement this. And Ms. White, I know that this was one of the things that you were really big on, wanting to discuss. So I also, lean to you all just to kind of give some feedback on what we think and what we did discuss in the last meeting, that this is not, the violation should not be predicated on personal feelings. It should not be predicated on what we think should be a violation, but also in looking at what we have already in policy, what needs to be added or removed. Ms. Page, I see you have a question.
No, I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that we reference both the governance manual, violation, and policy, because just as you said, everything that's in the manual, we have it in policy. But as we reference the manual, we can say in conjunction with policy, whatever policy number that it is. So I guess my point is to reinforce the violation as well as violation of the policy. And if we have these violations in place that support our policy, how can we, I guess my question is, how can we hold one another accountable? Because right now, we have the policy, we have the violation, but we are not leading by example.
Cool. And so also it says in the event a member is removed from committee assignments, you know, as described in this policy, or sanctions for serious repeated violations of school board procedures and standards of conduct may include public admonishment, reprimand, formal censure, or removal from committee assignments. The school board's vote on sanctions shall require a 2/3 majority of the full school board and be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. So also I think it's not so much about what we're referencing, but how do we actually implement you know, any of these violations as well. Ms. White?
Yes.
Yeah, did you have any
No,
to
my
add
question,
or?
well, I still have the same question that I had before. Who
Mhm,
decides this? And when you're saying sanctions, what type of penalty are you talking about? Just removing them from the committee?
mhm.
I still have the same two.
The same two concerns or
The same two concerns.
which is?
How will you, who will decide this? And when you're saying sanctions for serious or repeated violations, are you just removing them on the committees? Is there a list of sanctions? If you're gonna go by both of them, are there a list of sanctions in the other one, or is this just a sanction of you just saying, it says sanctions as detailed below? So I'm just curious to know that.
Yeah, so Ms. Lilly, I'll defer to you on just the implementation of policy. Like, I know what's written, but to
Right.
Ms. White's point, how would we, and I know we've talked about it and it says that we have to hold each other accountable, but I don't think that the policy is clear enough and it doesn't state how or who. And so, or how do we bring these concerns? So I'll defer to you on maybe helping us interpret this a little more clearer.
Okay, so let's look at number one. So this is how, so basically a couple of things. First, your school board standards of your school board procedures and standards of conduct, which is this policy, based on this policy, outlines a number, and that's earlier in the document, and you don't have to scroll to it. It outlines a number of activities that boards or actions that boards are asked to either refrain from or be mindful of as they conduct their business. The school board governance manual also adds another layer on that. So if you are going to be using the sanctions or the implementation for violations or the procedure for addressing violations that's outlined in the policy, I would suggest that in your manual, you reference, when you get to the policies, when you get to the consequences for violations, that you reference the same plan or the same process that's outlined in the policy. I think that it would just make it easier for it to be one set, and this is just a suggestion, easier for it to be one set of rules, so to speak, that you're either in the policy, the procedure for addressing violations of the policy is going to be A, B, and C, and the procedures for addressing violations of the board governance manual is going to be A, B, and C. They're going to mirror each other completely. So I suggest that they be the same. The other piece, if you look at number one, how you bring this to it. Now, how you bring a concern to the table is whenever a member believes that someone has violated the procedures of and standards of conduct deliberately or without so it has to be something that's willful, right? It's on the school board member to address the concern with the member themselves or bring it to the board chair. Simple. If the board chair is suspected of the violation, the concern should be referenced or referred to the board vice chair. The board chair or vice chair will bring the concern to the full school board during the regular meeting. So it's a discussion of the school board and to determine this is the issue, this is the suspected violation, this is what happened. And the board, because this is your body, your self-governing body, you will decide whether or not there is a consequence that's warranted. The consequences for violating the procedures and standard of policy are detailed below. So that's going to number 2. So that's how you bring it to the table, What can happen if the board says, yes, there was a violation of the policy. Yes, there was a violation of the manual. If you mirror these procedures in both. So it lists here what the sanctions could be. It could include public admonishment, meaning that in a board meeting, you simply are admonishing that board member who engaged in the violation of reminding them, and it could take a number of forms. It basically is just telling them this was the policy. You violated this policy by doing X, Y, and Z. And now it's a public admonishment. Now, a lot of these sanctions, I mean, we're not talking about, well, I won't use that example. We're not talking about there's not a lot that can be done, right? Because this is a board member who's been elected to that position, right? So it's not like the board can tell them, they can't be on the board anymore. So you're really dealing with a limited amount of consequences that can be enacted. So there's a public admonishment, there's a reprimand, there's a formal censure or removal from committee assignments. Those are the options that are listed here in the policy. Now, to the extent of Ms. White's question, I think the issue is what weight or what does it matter that this is happening, right? How serious are these consequences, so to speak? And I would dare say that they are serious. I mean, but seriousness is in the eye of the beholder, so to speak, right? So it's like and I'll use Ms. White, if Ms. White doesn't believe that a public admonishment is enough, or it doesn't, because you're trying to deter the violations from happening again. So if it is not enough for Ms. White, but Ms. Jones may take a public admonishment very seriously, that's where you kind of are trying to strike your balance between, all right, how far can you go? Number one, you can't go very far, because if you ultimately wanted to take somebody off the board, you can't do that, right? So what can you do? These are the things that you can do, and it would be a record on the record, so to speak, that this action was taken, that it was serious enough, the violation happened, and it was serious enough that the whole school board had to talk about it, had to take an action that gave consequences of a public admonishment. It basically is to establish the record that the board knew about the violation and they checked the violation by doing one of these things. So that way, I mean, that's really all you can control. Now, number 3 talks about one of the things that happened as this policy has been developed over the years. I think, and I could be mistaken, but we stopped at, I think, number 2 before, but then it morphed into, all right, well, if you take, for example, if Ms. Page is off of the board governance committee or any committees because of her actions, right? Then there's a period that you can review that action to determine whether or not in a year, if there has been some type of quote unquote change in that person or attitude of that person, to reinstate them to the committee. So that's really it. And so I get the sense, I hear that it's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't punishment, but that's really all you can do, right? That's really all you can do. in terms of, in the consequences section. And this mirrors, other school divisions that have these types of policies as well. And like I said, for me and for those of all of you are professional people, a reprimand or a formal censure in my profession is very, very serious to have on my record, right? And so so the person who is the subject of the consequence may or may not, and I've been through it before, that the person is like, oh, well, that's just like, with the kids, like, oh, well, that doesn't deter them. And so then you have to get progressive in how you handle that particular person. So I hope that kind of touched on everything. I think the policy, the way that the policy is written, explains everything that you asked for. But if the question is, does it go far enough to curb the behavior, that may be where the gap is, but the gap may not be resolved because there are a limited number of actions that you can take.
Thank you for that, Ms. Zuli. And then I was listening as you were sharing, but does it also maybe make sense based on whether it goes far enough, we also look at what those procedures and standards of conduct are? Because I don't recall, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, if we reference what those procedures and standards of conduct are.
If you go, if you scroll down or scroll up to the beginning of this document.
Yeah, and I was talking about in the manual. I don't
in the
recall if
manual?
we added it in the manual.
Oh, I'm not
actual
sure now.
Procedures of conduct. And so when you hear these right here, based off of what the procedures and standards of conduct are, maybe those could be used during, used as the response to implementation of the actual violations.
But I think it's both things, right? So you have this set of rules, right, that's already in your policy. And then you have what you all have also, which I believe, and it should reference your board governance manual, should reference this. And I think it does.
I think we do. I just can't remember if we,
and so,
I'm almost sure we, and if not, it's definitely in the norms.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so you have this list here, and then you have what's listed in your board governance manual, which also are rules. So you have this list of rules, that list of rules. All of those are board member by the policy or the manual are board members' responsibilities to adhere to, right? And if any one of those things, any one of these things, any one of the things in the manual have not been done, that's why I think it's a better idea for you all to, if you're going to, just to have one set of one procedure for addressing the violations, which could be this, that's already listed here. And then, well, the rules are here in the policy, the rules are in the manual. And, here is the one procedure for addressing any violation of either of those.
Any questions, recommendations, concerns, committee members?
So just for clarity, Attorney Lilly, so you're saying the manual and the policy parallel?
Ms. Jones, do you have a copy of the preface of the policy statement?
In the manual?
In the manual, I'm sorry, not the policy, in the manual, the preface of the manual.
Because I thought it was in there.
I thought it was in there too, because the documents should be read together,
Right?
They should be read together, because it's not like you're just doing what the policy says, you're doing what the manual says as well. So they should be read together, and anywhere that there's something that conflicts, it needs to be addressed. If you want to, for example, take your standards of procedure, your policy 1-1.5 was there as a precursor, if you will, to a governance manual, right?
Right.
It just didn't go that far into calling it a manual, but that is, the provisions that are in 1-1.5 is what your manual is based off of, or should be based off of, or incorporated in your manual at some point in time. So, whether you completely lift the language of your policy, or you just incorporate everything into your manual and call that the policy, that can be done as well. Either way, both need to reference the other. If you have a standalone manual and you have your policy as it's listed. You don't have to look for it, but I think that it does reference the policy 1-1.5 in some instance.
Yeah. So, hold on 1 second. So I guess the question now lies is, do we want to continue with what's already in the manual, perhaps add the additional language from the policy and reference it? And then, because we still haven't determined, well, I guess the policy determines that, like who brings this violation forward, how it gets addressed, when, where, etc.
Yes.
And whether or not we think, or as a starting point, we start here and try to even begin with addressing the violations, right? Because even if we feel like they're not weighty enough, we still have to already create or begin the practice of actually implementing what happens when the violation occurs. So I'd just like to know from the committee, how do you all want to move forward? And I know policy, Dr. Harris Muhammad will be, something that, we'll build upon, but like for now, what's the best way to continue this? And how do we begin implementing it? Because, and then also, is it just a thing of like per meeting, if something happens, it's like you then address the violation to board chair, vice chair, or are we like, I need some help with that. Like, how are we gonna do that? Because and we have addressed violations in the meetings, but I'm not sure if we've gone as far as what the policy states.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think one of the best ways, one is to always follow the policy. So to answer the question that Attorney Lilly had earlier, I think it needs to be preferenced in the manual so that it's clear, and it also has that connection that Ms. Lilly was describing earlier. Second, the how do you address or implement the policy, where I think it's somewhat in the language when a board member has violated the policy or violated a norm or policy, then any sitting board member can address that concern with the board chair. If, for instance, the board chair is of the concern, then that immediate concern from the board colleague will go to the vice chair. So really, it's already outlined for us what the steps are and the need if we have to go that route. And so adding additional sentences doesn't make the process flow. The original sentence, I believe in its intentionality, was this is what you do. If this happens, if a board member violates a norm or a policy, then any sitting board member can address that through the chair. And then there were some examples in the public. I don't think I read a written letter to the board member. I'm not sure if that's in our statement. But I would caution us using the public admonishment, because that can go into something bigger and different. So for for me, I would, if we have to use this policy in that manner, then any board member who has that concern, address that through the board chair. And then the board could agree or not to send a letter, some form of communication to the board member who violated that policy. And because I'm mentioning that because we don't want to get into the habit of trying to discipline each other in public. That's not the purpose of this governance manual. The purpose of the governance manual, if I can bring us back, is to encourage us, guide us, and then we demonstrate a model how to govern as a board. And so that is the originality of it. And so it's not to discipline each other. And so we will have, some instances where board members feel another board member is acting out of our norms. And then if that's the case, then I would proceed with caution and follow the policy.
Mhm. And for the record, I did go back and look, Ms. Lilly, and I don't see the violation policy listed in the manual. We had the violations, but I think because we kind of put them there as a placeholder and it was discussion that Ms. White wanted to talk about, we didn't necessarily add the policy. So I will go back and add the policy, update that, and send it out. When, to your point, Dr. Harris Muhammad, really no need to add the additional information, kind of just referencing the policy there. But I just wanted to let you know that I did go back and look. I don't see it listed in the bottom where I listed all the policies. I didn't have it there.
Okay, I just thought, I knew about the violations piece, that you were going to come back to that piece, but I thought that in general, the language, not, outside of the violations was there.
Well, not unless I probably have it in the top when we.
That's what I'm talking about, the top
standards
part,
of governance.
Yes,
But what I'll
that's
do
what I'm
for
talking
the
about.
violations piece, I'll go back and add, because part of, like we said, the standards of conduct is one thing, and then the violations is another. So I need to reference that policy under that.
And just, if I may, just as a suggestion, you may want to, I know it's redundant, but if you're going to be looking, you want to go to one place and see everything, right? You don't want to necessarily go to, have to go to another document. So if it's not too much trouble, you may want to repeat it in the manual, just so that it's contained in one section in one place. But to Dr. Harris Muhammad's point of disciplining folks in public and, other options that you all have, if it is the pleasure of this committee, the policy committee, Dr. Harris Muhammad, to entertain other things short of, and I don't have the policy up, but hold on for just a minute, because I do believe that, the first layer was to talk, board member to board member, talk to each other, right? Talk to each other about it. And then it went to the board chair, and then the board chair addresses it with the full board. But if there's an intermediate step of the board through the policy or through the manual authorizing the board chair to send out, for example, a reminder letter of, this has come to my attention, or this was brought to my attention, please be reminded of the policy, this, that, or the other. You know what I mean? So as an intermediate step as to, before you start talking about this in a board meeting, at 11 o'clock on Monday night, something like that. So, it may be better to add there, but then you also want to keep in mind too, that the tension between that and Ms. White's point of, so what, right? Is that really going to work? I think that's what you were getting at, Ms. White. Is that really going to work? You know what I mean? But that's totally up to you all to add. And then we can change the policy can be updated, and the procedures can go, if you want to add some intermediate steps as to before it gets to a full-blown board discussion. The board chair can meet with the board member, right? As long as it's two, the board, there could be a letter written But those letters are public letters. I will
Mhm.
put that out there. So that could happen before you have a discussion. It's just as to what the board authorizes the board chair to do.
So Ms. White, I'd like to maybe hear from you just a little bit, because I do think, and I could be wrong, and correct me if I am, that we have tried, on instances, to Dr. Harris Muhammad's point, to not publicly say X, Y, and Z, and maybe say beforehand, here's a reminder of what the governance, manual states in, respective to certain instances. But maybe you can share, based off of your concerns about it not being maybe strict enough or whatever have you, like what else are you seeing that you feel we could be doing differently, or that's not actually working when we've had certain attempts to try to do it? So I guess I'm trying to get find a happy median, right? So where it's not to the point where you publicly admonishing people, but that we also are able to say, here's a friendly reminder, but how do we do that dance, right? In a way. So that's, and so that it's not disciplining people, but then also here's the reminder.
Well, thank you, Ms. Lilly. I'm glad you explained it all and came up to exactly what I was really pretty much thinking. But I like the point of, you would have to put it together if it's going to be any type of policy. You can't be, this is one side of the policy, I'm reading this policy. This is going to have to be one piece. If you're going to actually in public say, well, Ms. White, you have violated number 1, but I have to also have the policy to look down and see, what are you talking about, number 1 or number 2, the way that you're going to say it. Because I've seen this board actually try to tell someone that they have violated something. I have seen some people in the board actually call out the person right in public. So it's no difference if you call a person in public saying you didn't do this right or you didn't do that right. It's no difference. My thing is the way that you going to say it to a person, because everybody on this board is not going to take it any kind of way. It just have to be respect. A policy is a policy. No matter where you work at, what you have done, a policy is a policy. And I'm glad that Miss Lilly did explain it. And I'm still going to have the same way that I feel about it. But I think that something could be added in there that where a person, they're going to bring it to the board speaks to the person, whether it's the president or the vice president or whatever. But there should be something where the person might want to rebuttal what has been said, or because everybody's not going to sit and take it, say, well, no, I didn't. And you may say, yes, you did. There should be maybe a 5-day, 2-day or whatever, where they can write some back to the board. It just have to go on with the process. The SOP, if this is the SOP, the policy, standard process, this is what's going to happen. But you got to make sure that you are actually, every board member has to have that policy in front of them. You can't just tell me, Ms. White, you violate number 2. What is number 2? What is number 2? The same way I hear it a lot on the board say, we can't make a motion. I can't even remember what was on the thing about we can't make a motion. I'm trying to find my paper where they said, well, we can't make a motion unless we make it in the new business. See, these are things, when you tell me it's a SOP, because I'm used to regulations. That's all I do at work. I need to see your regulation, because if not, I might challenge your regulation. So I need to see it. It has to be in front. You can't just call numbers out. It's number 1, number 2, number 3. No, I need to see it. And I understand about the violation. It's only so much that you can actually, say to a person anyway. And I have to, if that's what the violation is, and it's not going to, it's not going to be what I think it should be, I have no choice but to go with that SOP. But I just think that based on what I've seen, they just may not make too much difference. That's all.
Okay, so essentially what you're requesting is that we formalize it based on, like we saying, make it one place, maybe resend something out to the board that talks about what these violations are, pull the policy so that that aligns with it. And then list what the maybe violations will be. And I do think that it is on the board to kind of know what's in the manual, whether you agree with it or not. Because see, part of the problem is if you don't agree with what's in the manual, when we're trying to enforce the policy that is in the manual, that's where we get into this back and forth, because the reality of it is everything that we're saying when we say it, we have already discussed it. Now,
You
whether
may
it,
have, but you can't have two documents and expect everybody to know two documents at one time at a board meeting.
right,
So
but
they need to have
correct.
that document.
Correct,
and,
correct.
One
But
together.
correct. That you are absolutely correct. However, I will say that as a part of this governance team, and I think that you have been a part of this as well, that we have tried to be as clear as we can. And when we weren't, which is hence this meeting tonight, we come back, we try to revamp, revise, whatever language that we need so that folks can understand. And the reality of it is even with the manual in place, unclear or clear, which is in place, we are still coming back to the same place. So we can do that again. That's fine. We can go back.
What I'm saying is, it's not really the manual. It's how you going to
enforce.
not really, well, not enforce, but how you going to actually present it to a person. So it has to be done in the meeting to see how it actually is supposed to be done. You have to start doing it. You can't talk about it, keep talking about it and not doing it.
Well,
So it has to be somewhere that we can see, because we haven't seen it. I know we've been talking about it. We've been talking about norms, we've been talking about protocols, we've been talking about policies. Now we're talking about something else. But we got to make sure that when we do implement it, you said, like I said, Nicole, you have, anyway, you have check number one, violation number one, or whatever you want to put it, policy number one, and there are policy number two. It has to be implemented some way. We just can't keep talking about it. It's been since November, well, December, when we did it with Miss Patterson. Here we is now in October. It's getting ready to be a whole year again.
Correct. But I think I hear you. I hear you. I would like to just play devil's advocate here. We haven't just been talking about it. There have been emails that have been sent prior to meetings on a school board night that say, here's a reminder of we need to end at this time. We don't want to, whatever it may say, I can't remember. So I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm trying to hear you, and I'm trying to play devil's advocate here because I want to be able to
don't play devil's advocate.
No, but we have to, because if we're not playing devil's advocate, then we get into this back and forth thing, and and I want you to, I want to hear what you're saying, but I also want you to understand what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is we have done that. That's neither here nor there. I'm going to take what you're sharing and your feedback, and I'm going to present this back to the Chair Burke. She's on here. And I'm also going to say, when we come back with these reminders, that we can't continue to say we're just talking, because we have not just been talking. We've been talking and we've been having action. Now, if the issue is the way it's being presented, then maybe an email or whatever have you a couple of days in advance to give people a chance to know, versus maybe receiving an email the night of. Maybe I'm trying to be proactive. And so maybe an email beforehand versus the night of will help people be mindful. But we also have to be realistic about what's going on. And we do know that we have done what we can. And so we're not going to belabor this point. But what I'm saying is, I do think we also can't negate what has happened. And that's why we still talking.
Well, we can't go with, I'm not going to go behind. I'm ready to go forward.
But we've been going forward.
Meetings,
when was the manual? July?
We got to make sure that we are addressing everybody. So it has to be across the board. It just can't be this person, that person, or this particular person. It got to be straight across the board.
Correct.
So that's what I'm looking at.
Okay. And that's fair. And that's fair. And I think that what you're saying is fair. And I will make sure that in my report and in what I send to Chair Burke, that we will highlight and emphasize reminders. And I'm just asking you all jump in before we get off in these 7 minutes, reminders to the board of what we agreed upon. And those could just be the basics. Ending at 10, no introduction of new motions. Anything that is put out there needs to go under new business. And Ms. White, you're right about that. It wasn't the motions that we said need to go under new business. We said in terms of amending the agenda, if you wanted to amend the agenda and add something new, it needed to go under new business. And I don't remember the exact wording, but I know it was something relative to that. So it wasn't the
That's
motion.
correct. That's correct.
Okay, and the motions was part of the discussion that we said, and if a motion was to be introduced, that we needed to vet it. And I do believe that's somewhere in there. I'll look that up as well. And if
I
it's
see
not,
that in our policy.
yeah, and that's what I was
Where's
getting
it?
ready to say. And if not, we can't say that the night of, but that needs to then go on the agenda as a part of a discussion at some point so that we can get that in, get that kind of solidified.
Madam Chairwoman, if I
ma'am.
may,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
purpose of this discussion that we had twice before now was to, one, want to bring everybody back to the original discussion, to streamline our meetings, because our meetings were lengthy. Everyone acknowledged that. Two, to be professional, to maintain professionalism, and in all fairness, when we have information that we wanted to present the night of the school board meeting, that it would be addressed or introduced under new business, that which would allow the superintendent, because that's who we evaluate, is the superintendent, opportunity within 3 business days, I believe it was 3 business days, or it might have been 4 business days, to address what we're asking him to bring forth, and not try to have the administration produce that material that night. Lastly, was to ensure that we all were being heard with equity. That's what I heard from the last 2 meetings in summary. And so in order to move forward, we have to make sure we are adhering to what we have set as policy.
Right, agreed. And we can't keep changing it every time we have a meeting. It's
Correct.
like if this is what we agreed to and then we're trying or attempting to follow it, we can't keep coming back every meeting and having the same discussion. And that's the part that I think I get a little confused on, because I walk away thinking that it's clear. And as the chair, if I'm trying to communicate this information and thinking that it's clear, maybe that's something, that
I
I'm
need to be
missing.
clear on something somebody just said.
Yes, ma'am.
Because based on what I heard Miss Dr. Shonda Muhammad said, I need to be really, really clear. She said streamline our meetings. And the second one's professionalism. Under the motion was under new business, opportunities, 3 business days for the superintendent, and to show equity. Now, we have done this with and I think we might have beat the odds maybe once or twice with the 10 o'clock. Do we supposed to actually, because to me, I'm not a time person. I'm a standards person. So do we supposed to just cut off at 10 o'clock and say, oh, we're not going to do this anymore because we're at a board meeting, because that's one of our norms or our protocols? My second thing, people keep saying policy. I want to see in the policy, because this is my thing every time. I heard when I was going to do a motion, it was like, doesn't that supposed to come under new business? Wait for new business. We can't have that. I want to see that policy. Also want to see, I was given a sheet to fill out a policy. Is that in our policy, to fill out a sheet and then give it back to the president? I mean, you can't just make new rules as we go along.
No.
I like to see those things too, because
Yeah,
I'm getting a little misunderstood on that.
Yeah. So to be clear, and to Dr. Harris Muhammad's point, yes, to streamline, we agreed that we would end these meetings at 10. To be able to do that, part of that conversation and discussion was to not introduce motions in the middle of meetings that then took 20 to 30 to 40 minutes for discussion, which then pushes the meeting out when we have a ton of things on the agenda. We also asked to introduce anything under new business so that we could then come back and ask or discuss with the chair to be able to add that to, a next agenda, or,
Right, but
follow-up
what is the
meeting.
policy for motions? That's what I want to know. And where is it located?
Well, we
You can-
discussed, this is what we discussed,
What did-
that, because the motions piece was the Robert Rules of Order. And
Okay.
remember, we talked about that, and we talked
Yeah, but you
about.
can do a motion anytime with Robert Rules of Order. So when,
You can.
because I
Correct.
done heard a whole lot of things going
Right,
on.
but-
I need to know.
Yeah,
You
I-
can, Ms. White, my point,
Right.
if I may, you can
Hey, Ms.
draw a
Lily,
motion anytime in the meeting. You can, according to Robert Rules of Order. But the way that we wanted to run, let me rephrase that. The way that we were governing was not efficient, thus the governance manual needed to be implemented. I'm just going back to the original phase of this entire conversation. And a part of that conversation, and I know you have to go, Ms. White, so I won't be long, was we had to identify, we had to do a self-reflection as a board, what is causing us to appear that we're not governing efficiently. And so some of those bullets were, our meetings were too long. And then out of that bullet, how do we manage that? And then this discussion came about. Am I not correct? And if I'm wrong, let me know,
I don't know, but
Correct.
because I don't think that most of our meetings were long because of motions. We had a lot of stuff on the agenda, and we still do, because I see that they're being removed, trying to get to 10 o'clock, just like it did the last time, but we still was there for a long, I think it was 12 the other night. But I just want to know, is we going by, because I've heard it, when every time someone do a motion, Robert Rules of Order, you can make it anytime. But is it in our policy or something, or what's going on?
Ms. Lilly.
Can we hear from Ms.
Lilly? Trying
Lilly?
to address
I
something,
was,
Ms. Lilly.
a couple things. And, certainly, yes, Robert's Rules of Order is what it is, and you all can agree to adopt them. I will say that you all approved your governance manual, right? You voted, you approved it. That is your playbook. It goes with your policy, right? So all of those become what the board, whether you voted for it, against it, or whatever, it becomes what the board has agreed to operate under. So when you say, where is it written? Where is it? That is where it's written. It's written in your governance manual.
But that doesn't say that you cannot make a motion.
But hold on for just a second. It goes back to what Dr. Harris Muhammad and what Ms. Jones are saying, what was the impetus for some of the rules or some of the things that you say, because you all have a board, I'm just gonna put it out there, you have a board action item section, right?
Right.
The public knows that you are taking action, voting, making a motion, a second, and a vote on those things that are listed, right? So it really becomes a function of, and I'm not going to say that you can't make motions and this, that, or the other, but everything you can do, should you do to make the meetings more efficient, number one, to serve the purpose of, why are you listing board action items when you can just make 50 anybody can just make motions here or there, and nobody is aware of those things. So you got to look at why the agenda is written in the way that it is, right? You got to look at, does the motion, yes, we might be talking about, and I'll be facetious, we might be talking about a piece of a pencil. We might be talking about the number of pencils in the room. But then if you make a motion about, well, I want to know about the number of pens or the color of pens, yeah, we might be talking about supplies, but is that really pertinent to what it is you all were talking about?
But I still could make that motion in the board action.
Hold on for just a minute. But the issue is the board actions are already set by your agenda. So that is your notice to the world as to what actions you are taking. I am not going to say that things don't come up that you may be able to make up, but you try not, you've already told the public, we're talking about 5 things. We're voting on 5 things. And then to vote on another 5 just because, oh, we brought those 5 up because I wanted to talk about that, that becomes a function of, is that how you all want to present yourselves to the public and be in transparency and those types of things? Yes, Robert's rules say that you can make a motion, but should you? When it has not been when it has not been vetted, it's not even on the agenda. You might be receiving a report and taking action. That's why you have that nomenclature on the agenda. So I'm not going to,
But you don't have to, but Robert's rules say you can take a motion, and you know that, Ms. Lily. I've read this book.
Let me say
I
this.
read this book.
Hold on.
Let me say this, as I just said. I am not saying that you can't make a motion, so please don't say that.
I know, because I read it.
What I'm saying is that what your colleagues are trying to say on this in this meeting, and what the purpose of you all talking about this as norms is to make sure that it achieves several things, that your meetings aren't, because if the agenda is already long, and then that's because of your board actions and all these other reports and all that kind of stuff, why would you add 5 other motions that have not been vetted just so? That's number 1. Number 2, your agenda lists your board actions. So the public is aware of what you're going to vote on, what you're expected to vote on. So even though you can, why would you introduce 5 new things that aren't even in that section? So that's the point of it. I'm not going to debate what Robert's rule said or doesn't say. But what I think your colleagues are trying to say is, we agreed that we wouldn't do that. And if in adopting the board governance manual, if that is listed in there, that
It's
becomes
not listed in there. That's what I'm keep saying. And that is where the problem is coming in with our board members, because soon as a motion is, I guess, someone wants to make a motion, it's like you can't make a motion. And you can make a motion. Just because it hasn't been vetted, it doesn't have to be vetted. Robert's rules don't tell you have to be vetted. You can't just make rules up. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so here's again. Okay, so to be clear, this is what we need to do. We need to get with Chair Burke. We need to share all of the feedback that we received this evening. I hear you, Ms. White. And then we need to bring this for some level of discussion, because clearly what's happening in this container of governance is not spilling over to the full board. So there's a discussion that we need to have, and I'll talk with Chair Burke on that. That's, in this way, everyone will be in the loop of what it is that we're saying, because we're not trying to say to, Ms. Lily's point that you can't make a motion. We're just trying to be more efficient, be more effective. And so, yes, something does come up and it is things, but we also know that we have a history of introducing motions at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock and so we're trying to get away from that. And so that everyone is clear. So we have a container here, right? And within this container, it is 4 board members. There are still 5 other board members, or there are 5 tonight. And there are 4 other board members that we just need to ensure that this information is being explained to them, so that they can also understand and be in line, so that when it does come up, no one's feeling like you're trying to basically, say it. So I got you on that.
Okay. Good night.
Yes.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you. Good night. So Dr. Harris Muhammad, you had dropped off, so I just
I apologize.
No, you're fine. So I just wanted to share really quick what Ms. White was stating and what we all were sharing about not making motions. She indicated that has not been made clear to all the board, and it's not in the manual. And so what I recommended is maybe some sort of discussion. I can talk with Chair Burke offline on this about this, but some sort of discussion that reiterates what we did discuss, because I thought we discussed this. And then move forward. And really frame it in the way that you put it, Dr. Harris Muhammad, about just being more efficient. Why the manual? Like, let's bring it back. Sometimes you got to bring it back, and just really discussing that, because we are kind of like at an impasse in terms of, it's like everything that we are bringing forward, and this is no slight to her, but like everything that we're bringing forward is saying, like, it's either not matriculating down or it's matriculating down and we still in the space of where we gonna do what we're gonna do, but I don't know at this point. Well, I'll share the concerns. We'll add that policy info into the manual. And as far as the making the motions, I really love the way you presented that, Ms. Lee, because that makes so much sense. I didn't even really, I connected it, but I didn't, but the way you said it and stated it so eloquently was correct. The public is looking to see what's going on that night. And so to keep throwing things in there. But Ms. Page, I'll take your comment, Dr. Shonda. Dr. Harris Muhammad, if you have anything, you can close us out and we can adjourn this meeting.
So I just want to say, what I'm hearing is almost like the board norms that we agreed to, all 9 of us, policies that we have, and they are accessible to each and every board member, the governance manual that we all agreed to. It's almost like we need to refresh everyone's memory, because, and to Ms. Attorney Lily's point, yes, Robert's rules are in order. We know Robert's rules of order, but we've also agreed to our board norms. We've also agreed to the governance manual and our policies that we have in place. And we have a policy that talks about, you know, these adding agenda items. So like I said, it's almost, it sounds like what I'm hearing, that we need to refresh everyone's memory, but also we got to take some responsibility. We as board members, we have to do our homework.
I did hear that before, I think, to your point, Dr. Harris Muhammad, that there used to be the norms printed during board members.
Ms. Page.
Ms. Page, that there were, Dr. Harris Muhammad said it in the chat, but I do recall hearing that during meetings, we would be handed like what the norms are. So maybe that's something we can also go back to.
They would be posted at each person's spot.
Yeah, we've done that before.
So that could be something that we can just bring that back as well. But it's already 7:10, it's after 7. Y'all know I like to stay on time. I appreciate everyone, your time. Dr. Harris Muhammad.
Yes, if there are no other questions, I move that we conclude our governance board meeting for October the 12th, 2021 at 7:11 p.m.
Second.
We ready for vote?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Dr. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Ms. White?
She dropped off. She had to leave. All right, well, without any further business.
Motion passes.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And without any further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you,
all have a
everyone.
good evening, ladies.